We are live
Yes, yes.
Sundays with Steadyworth.
Yes, welcome to Sundays with Steady Work. This is our first official episode. We went live last week, and we want to start going live more regularly, but we thought we would move our live show to Sundays as a way to just be top of the week, just to get your week set up, cover a couple fun finance topics, inspire you to check in on your finances, be more hands-on with your money, and have a good time. So we're not going to keep you for long. Today, we're just going to be talking a little bit about budgeting. We actually have a YouTube video coming out on Tuesday on how to make a quick, simple, and easy budget. But today we're going to be just busting some myths about budgets, kind of just go over a few questions, open it up for questions at the end, and let you go. So let's hop right on in.
And who are you?
I am Gabriel Walters, founder and owner of Steadyworth, here with my lovely wife and partner, Laura Walters.
Yeah, so excited to be here this evening with you guys. I'm really excited to talk about budgeting because budgeting is the secret to freedom, financial freedom. It's the first
Yes.
step. If you're not budgeting, if you're not tracking your expenses, if you're not understanding what's coming in and what's coming out, it's really hard to build off of a shaky foundation. So that's kind of our primary financial planning principle here is we help you figure out the basics, build a solid foundation, and build up from there. And so today I'm really excited to talk about this because on Tuesday, like he mentioned, we're going to have more of a how to build a budget. But today we really want to talk about like the benefits of budgeting, why it's important, what it can do for you, and how it can kind of help you build your financial freedom. So
We're just going to open this up by saying, every time you spend money, you're voting with your dollars. And we just want to help by helping you have a budget. We make sure that it helps ensure that you're voting for the things that you actually want, that actually count. And so you know what it's like when we go down to the polls, we can vote, but we don't actually know what's going to happen, how it's actually going to play out. But unlike politics, your money, you actually get to choose every day how things are going to play out in your life by what you choose to do with each dollar you have.
I love it. So I want to kick us off with a question about mistakes. So what's the biggest mistake you think people make when trying to create their budget for the first time?
I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when creating their budget for the first time is by not going back and tracking the numbers of what they've actually been spending. Someone could just say, hey, I'm going to sit down and create a budget. Then they'll go, oh, I think I'm going to spend this much money on eating out, this much money on happy hour, this much money on groceries. And they start just assigning numbers to things without actually going back and looking at what their actual numbers are that they've been spending over the last 2 to 3 months. And then they kind of get in it and they say, oh, you know what, my budget's not lining up with what I thought it would be, but they didn't really start with an accurate, just with accurate numbers to begin with. And so I think, that's a common mistake, and it's a little bit of hard work, but one of the things you really want to do is just go back and see, okay, what is my average that I spend if I'm going out to coffee on a regular basis, or eating out, or at the grocery store, or on gas, or transportation to work, whether it's public transportation or entertainment. Just knowing your averages in those categories and then setting a number then after you know what those averages are can then be more realistic. So then that can help keep you on track.
So it sounds like kind of if you've never budgeted for the first time, the first month, you really want to just spend the time tracking what you're spending.
Yes, I think that's important first to track first. And then first you want to track to know what you're spending. Then you set what your budget is for what you want to spend and put it in those categories. And then you kind of continue to track to make sure what you're doing is lining up in those categories.
Right, because you could be unknowingly spending massive amounts of money on Amazon and not know it because it's so easy to buy on there, or you could be spending more money eating out than going grocery shopping, etc. But you don't really know that until you track it. And then kind of the key there is like, hey, what do I actually want to be spending my money on, and what do I not want to be spending my money on, and building a budget around that.
Right. And we also, right now we're using examples of the importance of tracking of like, you could be spending more money, you might be overspending on this, but you also might be underspending on something that you want to spend on. And so I know that you're probably going to share at some point your favorite budget story of when you built your budget. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but You could be underspending and actually have money, excess money that you want to spend on something that's really valuable to you. But since you're not tracking your spending, you don't even know that you even have it because you're not tracking it. And Laura, at some point during tonight's call, we'll share, or during tonight's live, we'll share, what that is, what that meant and what that looked like for her.
Yeah. Well, I can share it right now because I feel like she
Sure.
might be a good space for it. But I had never kept a budget consistently. I was always pretty worried that I would find out that I was broke. Or
I
that
think
I
that's a common thing. Sometimes people are like, it's kind of like going to the doctor. It's like, I don't want to know. Some people just don't want to know. So it's like, I don't want to look at my budget because I don't want to know what's going to happen.
Or it's like, I'm not ready to make a change. I think that was a big thing that I was feeling too, is like when I sat down, I remember getting a financial advisor at some point. A coworker had introduced me to someone. She sat down, built me a budget, and I looked at it and I was like, there's no way I can do this. Because I wasn't in the space or like the mental space to be like, I'm going to give up going out to eat and cook a bunch of my meals. I just wasn't in that space. I was in a space in my early 20s where I was working all day. I had friends, I wanted to hang out with them, and we went out to eat. That's what we did. So I was like, in a lot of ways, I just felt like sitting down, I would just feel bad or feel guilty or feel ashamed or embarrassed that I was spending money a certain way. And so I'll come back full circle on that. But when I finally sat down and did it, I was at a place where I had literally just doubled my income. So I was like, I probably should sit down. And you encouraged me to do this too. Like, I probably should sit down and look at the numbers because I know now that I'm not overspending. And I was able to see, in fact, the opposite was what happened is like I had so much extra money that it was just sitting in my bank account doing nothing. But I was still scared to spend money on things like going to get clothes or doing this or doing that. I just didn't feel like it
Well,
was worth
I think
doing.
with the story you just told, there could be kind of a misconception there because, you also shared just like, oh, well, I doubled my income, and somebody might be thinking, oh, well, heck, if I doubled my income, I'd have all this extra money too, right?
Right. Yeah,
But,
that's true.
but what about, you setting up for the savings thing that rounded
Well,
up into
that's
the other
true.
account and you saved $10,000 that way? That's a form of, you were still living in budget and still was able to save $10,000. I'll let maybe share that because you're
Well,
still on that same income where you feel like you're broke and then still save $10,000.
well, what I would say is I probably would have found out the same thing even if I did not double my income. That was just the trigger for me that was like, oh, I should probably sit down and budget. But before that, I didn't really have a savings. I had no savings account. So if someone invited me to go on a trip or do something, like I was charging it or whatever it was. And so I set up like an automatic savings transfer where it like rounded up every dollar or up to the $5. And I never ran out of money. Like I had extra money and I ended up saving. I think it ended up being about $10,000 over the course of like 7 to 8 months. Yeah. And so, but once I sat down and did it consistently, I started to see patterns of how I was spending money. And so it was easier for me to make decisions and feel less guilty about, oh, it's fine if I'm spending X amount of dollars on groceries or X amount of dollars eating out. Like it all kind of fits in this realm. So it actually removed a lot of the anxiety and the emotion that I was feeling around spending money. Whereas like literally every time I spent money, I felt guilty. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other big mistakes too that could be made around budgeting is thinking I need to have more money first before I budget, which we're kind of touching on here.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the big one. It's like, hey, I don't have enough money to even make a budget. So why would I even do one? And I think that misconception leads into, because then all of a sudden when somebody doubles their income, such as you did, or gets a raise, even if it's just 10% or 20%, they still don't have any money. Because,
Right.
if the thing, in the Bible, it talks about being faithful with the few so that you can be faithful with the many. And so it's like, if you're not being faithful with what you have and you don't at least know what you're spending and where that money is going to, all of a sudden, if you have more money, it's just going to be doing more of the same of what you're already doing. So that's why it's really important to have this month, the money that you have coming in on a regular basis already dialed in. Even if it's not enough, you should know, okay, each month I'm short $300 and this is why. And
Right.
so, or if it's more, okay, each month I have a surplus of this amount and I'm putting it into X and this is why. So, you should always know whether you're short or whether you have enough or more than enough and where all of that money is going, because the more money you have, then the better you'll manage it. And then the more money you'll have, even more.
Well, and I think, the root of any change is having some sort of clarity, which kind of can feed into more of some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. But it's like, if you don't know you're short $300 every month, you have very limited options of what you might change. But if you know that information, then you've got some options start to open up about what you could do. Like maybe you do need to drive Uber for a couple hours on a weekend to make up the difference. Maybe you do need to start looking for a job that pays you a little bit more. Maybe you do need to up level your skills to grow in your career. Like you just have more options that way instead of always feeling stuck. And so I'm wanting to see what kind of like the next, I was just looking at some of the next questions. And so,
what's the next one?
Well, why do you think so many people feel like a budget means they're broke or missing out on fun?
That's a great question. And I think, people can think that having a budget might make you feel like you're broke or you're missing out on fun. And that's possibly because you haven't gotten really clear on what your goals are yet. And you haven't fully aligned how you want your money to get to your goals. And I think, if we were to forget money, let's think about TV. Like I have a budget for how much time I'm going to watch TV each week, because if I don't, then my life is just going to be wasteful. I also have to have a budget for how much time I'm going to spend working out, because if I have a budget for me working out, that makes sure that I'm going to be in good health. I have a budget for how much food I'm going to eat so that I'm not overweight. And a lot of times I have to revisit that budget very regularly because I like to stuff my face. There's a fat kid inside of me and I don't want it coming out of me. I have a budget for how much sleep I'm going to get so that I can have good mental clarity. And so when we talk about having a budget around money, that's just because we want to be a good steward of our resources. Because if we're not putting proper parameters around our money, then it's just going everywhere. And when it goes everywhere, it's probably not going to the most key places that we really want it to go.
And so it's really the lack of goals or the lack of clarity on your goals that can make budgeting feel restrictive or not fun or inhibit fun.
I mean, if you were talking to somebody who were getting their beach body together and they says, hey, you know what, I'm not overeating for the next, or I'm making sure I'm eating the right amount for the next however long, so that when I get to the beach this summer, I can make sure that my abs are looking good and I'm feeling cut. I mean, I'm sure they don't feel restricted, but they also have what they're doing connected to a goal. And so I feel like if we're connecting our money, all of a sudden, if you're connecting that money and it's like, hey, I'm not spending money here doing this because I'm actually saving this money and this is what's going towards my Paris trip, or this is going towards a down payment on my house, or this is going into this investment that I'm growing so that I can start building generational wealth. All of a sudden, it's a mindset shift, and then you won't feel restricted because it's like, hey, my money's actually going to where I want it to be.
Yeah, and having that clarity and goal gives your dollar back to the beginning, gives your dollar a purpose.
Right.
And when your dollar has a purpose, there's a little bit more motivation behind how you utilize it or where you put it in order to accomplish that goal. And we find often when we're working with clients that their goals are either really unclear or very vague. So just to kind of spin off here, like how could someone get more clear on their goals as it relates to their budget, like getting their budget in line? Like what would you recommend?
I mean, my simple strategy to getting clear on anything in life is, what is the next best important thing that I need to do? What is the one thing that if this thing changes, everything changes? We're constantly, if you follow us on Instagram, I'm constantly saying this. Even when I'm sitting down, like today, I was doing my to-do list and I have about 10 things on the list. I'm like, okay, it's Sunday. What should I work on? Because I could work on any 10 of these and they're technically all important, but I'm like, which one's at the top of the list that is like, this one's the most important thing to do? it was actually uploading the budgeting YouTube video to YouTube. So because I know you guys are going to be like on Tuesday, hey, I'm looking forward to watching Steadyworth's YouTube budgeting video. So guess what? That was the one that got done.
Yeah.
So, but what is that thing for you? What is the thing that, hey, this is the most important thing? Put your priorities in order of importance. And, that's in life, and that's with the money as well.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing too, just back to even having each dollar have a purpose, right? Like if you're really fuzzy on like what you're trying to accomplish in life as a whole, this makes this harder as well, right? Like there's simple goals like I want to save $10,000, I want to invest. Those are all great. Highly recommend having those goals and pursuing those goals. And I think there's a layer even deeper there where it's like, how do I want, what are my values in life and how do I want to spend according to my values? Like, how can I vote with my dollar around my time? And, one thing that came to my mind when you were talking about too is like, and this goes sort of back to tracking a little bit. It's like, where are you spending your time and where are you spending your money? And that will tell you what your goals are right now. I know at one point you've told this story a lot where it was like you were going to
play
studying
golf
for the CFP and you were playing a lot of golf. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
It was just a time in my life, and honestly, I was playing golf, but I was using it to fill the time because I had other things that were higher priority, but the things that I had that were higher priority weren't as fun as my weekend activities of hanging out with my friends, going and playing golf, and just shooting the mess and do what we do. But then, I was praying one day and I just felt like God was like, yo, are you trying to get on the PGA or are you going down this finance route? Like, it was like, because if, and that's God being sarcastic with me because I'm nowhere even close to getting to the PGA. The closest I'm getting to the PGA is like on Ticketmaster's buying a ticket to the PGA, like to go watch. And so, or on ESPN or something. So he's like, you need to be actively pursuing the goals and stuff that you have. It's like, you need to put those golf clubs down and get back into your study zone on the weekend. But studying on the weekend actually isn't all that much fun. And it wasn't fun. It was a grind, but it was something that I needed to do to actually get to where I am today. And so I think that's, one of those things is kind of what's the thing that if this thing changes, everything changes. And I could tell you that if I didn't put those golf clubs down and do what I needed to do, I would not be sitting here in front of you on this live right now with this Steadyworth t-shirt on and doing the things that we've been doing the last 4 years, because that stuff got me to where I am right now.
Yeah. And it's almost what you're saying almost makes me think of like, there is a little bit of a short-term sacrifice for long-term gains. Like,
absolutely.
It's not always glamorous to sacrifice what you're doing in order to achieve a goal, but if you don't ever have a goal, you never sacrifice anything and you never really get anywhere. And I think this is why a lot of people feel behind, because I was doing some research on ChatGPT the other day and it was saying that like only 5% of people actually pursue their goals and pursue their dreams. And there's a lot of reasons why, which we won't go into today. But I think, being clear on what your goal is, being clear on your budget is so important. And like we said at the beginning, is like the foundation of building any financial freedom, mental freedom, professional freedom, all of that stuff. It kind of all leads that. So it is really important, something that we should be doing. I say should kind of as a joke because you don't want to feel guilty about it, but it is something that's so important. And so if someone has tried budgeting before and it didn't work, what's one small change they can make this time to stick to it?
I think, one of them is that, it's possible that their numbers weren't right. And so, like I said in the beginning, and, maybe their numbers aren't right. So it's like, oh, this isn't working because the numbers are off. It could have been the system that they're using. Maybe they didn't have a format that works really well for them. But, one thing that I think is possibly the why isn't strong enough. They have that book, Start With Why. And then it's like, we're in a program with Omar and he often says, reasons come before results. And so it's like, you have to have your reason before your result, before you really, you have to have reason strong enough so that when things get hard, you're able to stick in there and get to the result. And so if somebody goes, oh, I tried a budget, but it didn't work, it's like, well, maybe your reason for needing the budget wasn't strong enough. Because if you had a child or if you had a parent who was sick and all of a sudden, the doctor came to you and said, hey, this person's going to die unless you budget X amount of money to make sure that they get this medication and you do this, all of a sudden now you have a very real reason to make some changes in your life. But
That's
if
right.
you just don't have any reasons and it's like, oh, well, I'm trying to save this extra $200, but it's not really connected to something that's really at your heart, that's really important to you. Well, then if it happens, great. And if it doesn't happen, great. So, you have to have that why. It has to be really important because you have to have that reason to get those results.
Yeah, it's like you have to have some sort of goal that you're chasing, but also some sort of motivation, because I talk about this all the time, being like a former change person, where, when you're going through change of any sort in an organization individually, there's something called the messy middle. So it's like where you currently are and where you want to be. And then you actually have to chart the path to get there. And it's not really a straight line ever. It's back and forth. It's up, down, backwards. And so when all of that stuff comes, when life comes and hits you, you got to have some really solid reasons why and some really solid goals, or some really clear goals, so that you can stay connected to that when life gets really fuzzy, because it does and it will. And that doesn't mean that you give everything up. It's like you just got to kind of stay in your lane and keep trucking the best you can. Obviously have grace for yourself to make mistakes. Maybe you eat out a little bit more than you thought you would, or this or that. I mean, we've been through that. So it's just being flexible. Like, your budget in a lot of ways, aside from your fixed expenses, can be flexible. So, what do you remember a time when you stuck to a budget to help you achieve something that you really wanted?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I think two of the biggest times that stand out was one, starting Steady Worth. I had to get really clear on my numbers, really clear on my budget, because, in order to start Steady Worth, I had to quit my job. And, we also got married that year, and then we were living on one income, and, we didn't know when Steady Worth was going to make money. So, that was a really a key time on, that leading up and getting clear on the budget. And I also think just even right now, we've been really just keyed in on our budget, just because we have some very specific goals of what we want to do with our money. And so, I think I may have this later to share on the show, but I can share now. It's like, so we check our budget every week. We do Money Monday. And so, when we go through our process of how we check our budget, and when we go through our budget, we're actually checking in on our spending, literally like pretty much every transaction that each person made. I mean, we do a very detailed amount about it, because we know every time we spend money, we're voting with our dollars, and we have clear goals that we want to vote for in this season. And so we want to make sure that, those votes are getting counted and they're going in those directions. So, I'd say right now, the budget is really important. We've been very consistent on it. Also, starting Steady Worth has been a very important time. So, yeah, you're just tracking it like how we're doing everything else.
Yeah. And we are old school. We have a spreadsheet that I built when I made my first budget ever. I still use this template, but just a little bit different, because now it's both of us, and it's a Google sheet, so we can share it. So we can both be in it at the same time. That is our preferred way to do it, mostly because we can see the numbers. We actually like to translate the bank statements to the spreadsheet, because it helps us get a really tangible, like, it helps us hold on to what we're spending a little bit more. Like, in this day and age, like, we actually don't use cash ever. Like, Gabe usually keeps more cash than I do. I actually don't keep any cash. So it's really easy to just swipe and never think about it again. And if you have an automatic tracking system with an app, that is totally great and amazing. And we recommend that if it works for you. But for us, we just like to see it.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, we just like reviewing each transaction, in the spreadsheet. And then also we have that spreadsheet broken down into categories. So then we get to compare month over month, like, hey, which categories did we spend more money in? Like, so sometimes, like, if we're traveling, groceries may be lower in that month, but eating out is more. Or you may have more miscellaneous, like one month the dog was sick. So, we had spent a little bit more money on doing pet care. And so it just kind
Yeah.
of depends. Or, sometimes we have months where we're re-upping on vitamins. So it's a little bit more money on healthcare
Health.
or
Yeah.
or
Health.
whatever that
Yeah.
one is called. But yeah.
Well, and I was going to mention this as well. Like there are a couple columns or areas of spending that we have that are strictly value based. So, like for us, Gabe and I, health is a huge value. It's like one of our number one values is just being healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. And so we have a whole column for health because we spend a lot of time investing in it. Our grocery budget is a little bit higher than most people's because we buy organic food, we buy whole foods, and we're not vegetarian, unfortunately. So when all the prices
She
go
didn't,
up,
she didn't mean we shop at Whole Foods, which we do sometimes, but we buy
we
Whole Foods.
we
Yeah.
buy Whole Foods. Yes,
Yeah.
we don't have a Whole Foods close to us anymore, but we were regularly spending. We basically had a Whole Foods line item where we spent all of our money. But those are values to us. Like those are the ways we like to spend money. So for us, spending a little bit more money in those categories and spending a little less money in other categories works for us. And so that's another kind of component to budgeting and making budgeting work for you is like, what are your values? Like, what do you like to spend money on? What do you want to spend money on? And how does that add value to your life versus like, is this not really adding value to my life, but I'm doing it anyway? Like, I don't want to miss out on hanging out with my friends, but I don't really like to go to happy hour. Those are some of the harder ones, right? Where you have like competing values. But yeah. So on that same note, I know that we're spreadsheet people. What is maybe some other ways of tracking a budget that you've used in the past that was helpful?
One way I've tracked is on the Notes app on the iPhone. I've written stuff down in that. So I had a few different, I had like this one thing that I would do, and I do, or actually, I'm sorry, maybe it wasn't the Notes app. Maybe it was a Google sheet.
Okay.
And then I did, and I just did it was a Google sheet, but it was a very simplified one. And it was date. I wrote the date. I had one category going across. I was date, place, category, amount. And I just did that going down. So then I could just see, okay, very simple. These were the dates. These were the places. This is the category. This is the amount. So then I can easily just glance at that and see just where money was going, what places were being frequented, and what was going on. Also, one thing that I really like about when I was tracking, like writing it down, which could seem kind of cumbersome, is that I knew that every time I spend money, I had to write it down because at that point I wasn't doing it once a week. I was doing it every time my card was coming out or every time cash was coming out. So I know, okay, do I really want to spend money on this? Because now I know, hey, here's $30 coming out, or here's $100 coming out, and I have to track it right here on my phone.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm like, you know what? Actually, I don't want to write that down. I don't really need that. And so, that could be with an Amazon purchase that was so easy to make, or with, just going through the store and picking up something random at my old job where I used to work at. There was like a Trader Joe's and another store right there, and Walgreens, CVS. Sometimes I just walk over there on my break just to get out the store and walk around. Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm buying whatever. And I don't know that I really need that, but it was just, hey, they're giving away samples at Trader Joe's, and now I have 3 new things of apple juice I didn't even know that I wanted. But it's,
Right.
it's the sample of the day, and it tastes good, and I'm lightweight hungry.
Yeah. Well, I used to use Mint, which is no longer in play. Like it's not a thing anymore. But
Interesting. I didn't know that they stopped.
yeah, I think I don't know what happened. They got like absorbed somewhere, but I did use an app for a while, and I did like being able to see it all in one place. But the management of the Mint app was a little bit more cumbersome for me because you had to go in there and correct certain ones because it would auto categorize. And if it auto categorized wrong, you'd have to go in there, correct, change thing. So it just felt easier again for me to do spreadsheets. So if you use an app that you really like and you want to share it in the comments, that would be amazing.
I just Googled. So Mint was owned by Intuit, or they had acquired Intuit acquired it. So I just says, does Intuit still own Mint? It says no. Mint by Intuit does not exist anymore. Intuit shut down Mint's budgeting app in March 23rd, 2024. Users were encouraged to migrate their data to Intuit's Credit Karma.
Interesting.
And so while Credit Karma offers some financial tracking and budgeting features, it does not fully replicate Mint's capabilities. So
bummer. I wonder where they did that.
just a little thought. So yeah, interesting, because I know a lot of people who've spoken about Mint, and I had no idea that they had.
I liked it. It had the graphs
down,
up the top, but I know there are a lot of budgeting apps out there, and there are different ways in which you can budget. So again, like if there's an app or something that you really like, share it in the comments. Let us know why. It would be really helpful for us since we're kind of old school people, and we can do some additional research on that and share more. So kind of one, I think, final question that I have for you is, for someone listening today, what's a small action they could take to get more hands-on with money this week, and what should it be?
That's a great question. What's a small action that somebody listening today could take to get more hands-on
with their money this week?
I was just thinking about this quote that it says, it's not what you know, but who you know. And that meaning that when you know people and you have quality relationships with people, they can open up doors for you. And I was just thinking, when you know your money and you have a quality relationship with your money, because you can have money coming in and have it going out, but if you don't really have a relationship with it, if you're not having a budget, tracking your spending, into your investing, having a financial plan, when you know your money and your money's on track, having your money and your finances in line can actually open up doors for you. Because in life, we all run through certain opportunities, but a lot of times when we get presented with opportunities, we have to have money to take advantage of those opportunities. And if your money's not in order when a great opportunity is presented to you and you don't know, hey, I can take advantage of this opportunity right now, because you don't know, how much money you have coming in, how much you have going out, if how much debt you need to service. It's really important to make sure that you know exactly what is going on with your money so that you're able to take advantage of those opportunities. So I would say build that relationship right now with your money. Start building a budget. Start tracking your expenses. This isn't punishment. This is actually going to be freedom. There's a book on one of these cases behind me by this guy named Jocko Willink, I think is his last name, called Discipline Equals Freedom. Any area that you are very disciplined in, you actually have freedom in that area. So just want to encourage you to know your money, get some discipline in that area. You'll get some freedom and it will be a blessing.
And one thing I want to offer too is, like, some people have a complicated relationship with money, or a traumatic relationship with money, or they don't know what kind of relationship they have with money. We actually have these calls called budget breakthrough calls, where we offer them. They're like, I think 15, 30-minute calls where you can schedule them with us and we can kind of walk through some of that stuff with you. And we'll leave that in the link. We'll leave a link for that in the description box below. But I do think it's really important, to your point, is to build a better relationship with money. I think a lot of people have a lot of like anxious, guilt, embarrassed, shame around money. And so that can really get in the way of building that financial freedom that you're looking for, and building a life that you're looking for too. So appreciate all.
I would say, if you made it this far into live, thank you for sticking with us.
Yes.
If you got some value out of this live and you learned something new, consider giving us a subscribe. If you already knew everything, maybe just shoot us a like.
Yeah. And leave a comment with maybe one of your takeaways or something that you're going to do this week to kind of push this forward. If you do nothing else, we have a free masterclass coming up on Tuesday at 7:30. It's 6 roadblocks to financial freedom and how you can break through. We'll also leave a link to that registration in the description box below. We would love to see you there. We would love to answer your questions. We would love to help you on your journey towards financial freedom. That is something that both Gabe and I are super, super passionate about. And thank you so much for tuning in. And do you want to answer any questions?
Sure.
Any other questions?
Do we have some questions? And has anybody else?
Yeah, there's a couple here. Let me see. So, how often should I review or update my budget?
I would say the more often that you review it and update it, the easier it is. So, like I mentioned, we do Money Monday, so we review it every week. But if there is a week, such as we're out of town and we don't review it on a Monday, then it takes twice as long the next week. And if it turned into 3 weeks, which thankfully it has not turned into 3 weeks in a long time, it would take 3 times as long. So I think make sure if the more regularly that you update it, the less work it is. And
Yeah.
it doesn't take long, because think about how many times you swipe your card in a 1 week period. It shouldn't be more than, I'm not going to tell you what it should or should not be. But if you do it more regularly, it will be a lot quicker, is my point.
Yeah. It's sometimes our Money Monday takes us like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Or quicker. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the largest part about it is just getting the recording set up and sitting down.
Right.
Okay, cool. Let's see what else we have here. What if my income changes every month? How do I budget when I don't know what I'm going to make?
That is a great question. I'm going to go into I don't go into that exact question on this YouTube video, but just like a little spoiler would be, cause I give a kind of a snippet to what you should know. But basically, even though your income changes each month, at minimum, you need to know how much your fixed expenses are. And these are the things that don't change each month. So, what is your rent, mortgage, phone bill, utilities, transportation, insurance, all of the things that have to be paid each month. And so then once you know all of those, and let's say that number is $4,000 a month. So then okay, that has that. So then as you have money that's coming up, and what we call that is uneven cash flows. So then okay, if I have 1 month where I have 10,000 or 12,000, I can't I cover my costs, my 4,000, but then I need to actually be projecting out and saving a certain amount of money each month, so that if the next month I only have 2,000, I still have another 2,000 to cover those costs plus any miscellaneous I may have. So the thing is that you have to be even more dialed in on your spending, more dialed in on tracking your budget, because you don't want to have a great month where you have a ton of money come in, it all gets spent. Then you have a month where you only have a little money come in, and then all of a sudden you need to put all of the rest on your credit card or call and borrow money from a friend.
Yeah. So it's just kind of even more important for
Yes,
someone making
so
income
much more important.
to be
Absolutely.
budgeting and making sure that they've got some reserves, basically.
Yes, but check out Tuesday's video. It will help you.
Cool. What if my partner or family isn't on board with the budget?
That is a great question. It depends on how your finances are set up. So you could have a partner or family member not on board with the budget, and you guys could have separate finances. So then you just have to keep yours in track and be the best steward of your resources that you can do. It can be a bit contentious when you have shared resources and they're not on, and they just start doing whatever. At that point, if you guys have shared resources and somebody's not on track, that could be like, maybe we need to go to a relationship counselor conversation type thing, or maybe we need to split the finances, because they say that money, sex, and communication are the 3 biggest breakers of relationships, marriages. Really, somebody once told me it's not money, sex, and communication, but it's communication, communication, and communication, because you communicate about money, communicate about sex, and you communicate about communicating. So if you are trying to communicate about money and it is not being properly received, there is a problem there, and you need to get down to the root of it, because it's going to just continue to snowball and be a bigger issue later on down the line.
Yeah. And something else I would say too, and we actually created like a facilitation guide, like a couples facilitation guide around money, just because a lot of people, it's so contentious. It can be so contentious between people that it's hard to get outside of your own experience and really just have like a conversation. But one thing that Gabe and I always say too is like, you're on the same team. So, I think even stepping back and looking at what your goals are individually and as a couple can really help with this. Like, whenever I was dealing in organizations with people who had like conflicting goals, or departments that had conflicting goals, my starting point always 100% of the time is like, what's the shared goal? Like, how can we get to a place where we have a shared goal around something so that I feel ownership in it, or this group feels ownership in it, and this group feels ownership in it. So like, I think even just stepping back, it's like, okay, I have these individual goals that I'm really excited about or that I really want to do. But what's my shared goal with my partner? And how can I get them on board or to see that shared goal in a way that motivates them? Because they may have their own reasons why. They may have their own blockers. They may have their own barriers. And so it's really important to kind of like almost remove yourself and try and navigate it. Without thinking 100% about what you want or what your goals are and trying to find that shared ground, that common ground that you guys can work towards. I think that might help. So it's maybe a bit bigger of a conversation at first. Then you kind of go down into the budget piece. Okay, how do we make that shared goal happen? How do we get that for you? How do we get this for me? And that might change the dynamic of the conversation a little bit as well.
Absolutely.
Cool. Do you want to do one more question?
Sure.
Okay. Is it okay if I don't follow my budget perfectly every month?
Well, I mean, it depends on what type of results you're going to get. If we said, hey, you can, if you do X, Y, and Z, you will be able to have the body you want for the beach this summer. But you're like, okay, I'm going to follow this 75%, but then 25% of the time I'll make sure I have a few extra desserts, eat chocolate cake or eat bigger portions, then you're not going to be on target to where you want to go. So once again, the discipline inside of your budget is giving you freedom. So you want to make sure that your why is big enough so that you're following it. And the thing is that budget shouldn't feel restrictive. Like if you are not being able to spend money on an area that you want to spend money on, then maybe you need to reorganize the budget, or maybe it's a bigger thing. And it's like, hey, I need a job that makes more money. And so that I can have more money to go to these other goals that I have. And so I think there's multiple ways of looking at it, but really we want to get you to a point. Our goal is how can we live a life that we're truly excited about while still being living in the guidelines of being financially responsible and saving for a future that we're also excited about as well. And so, we really want you to be able to live a life that you're passionate and fired up about. And if you're not feeling that right now in the budget, then, we would like for you to make some changes so that you're not waiting for some future time to live or be your best self, but you're doing it on a regular daily basis.
And one thing I would say is perfect is never the goal, but consistent is the goal.
Yes. I mean, there will be times, anybody can go off, something come up and you just weren't prepared. And, as you build a budget and as you have your finances in order, you'll have your budget, you'll have your emergency fund and different things that are backing it up. So if something comes up, things just don't blow up.
Right.
But if things did just blow up, or if you just went off track or something and
I would say
you can get back on track.
I would say if you're, depending on what your output is, right? Like if you're generally spending within your if you're still spending within your means, if you spend a little bit more on groceries here, a little bit more on eating out here, but you're in target with your whole number, I think it's fine. Like life happens, right? But don't use that as an excuse to let go here or let go here. Like try and be as disciplined as possible. Of course, give yourself grace when things happen, life happens, but consistency is the key, not perfection.
I think one thing that we didn't touch on in this conversation that I want to make sure I add in, and I probably should have started with this, is that when you build a budget, you want to make sure that you build in a category for fun. There should be something that's in there that's, hey, this is the money that I have for fun. This is the money that I get to go spend, that I get to do what I want to do with, that's not related to bills or me adulting or being responsible. You want to have some category that's set up that you get to do what you want to do with, because that's what makes all this other stuff sustainable. You don't want to have to feel like you're sacrificing all the time and you're not seeing any win. So I definitely would encourage anyone who's building a budget, make sure that you have a category built for fun. And then that's where it gets tricky, because it's like, hey, do I want to spend my fun money this way or spend my fun money that way? Because you only get to spend it one way, so you got to be very clear. And that's when you put those goals in order of importance. What type of fun are you trying to have this month?
Yeah, totally. Love it. Yeah, that's a good add-on. So I think we should wrap up. We're at about 45 minutes. Or do you have any final closing thoughts?
This Tuesday, we have a YouTube video coming out about how to make a simple budget. This is a build on to this conversation. Thank you for joining us for our first Sundays with Steadyworth. We will see you next Sunday.
Sunday. Hopefully a little earlier. We'll see.
Yes.
You'll know, though. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Have a great day.